Welcome to Mixology, the intersection of customer education and customer marketing. I'm Kristine Cookett, and along with Shannon Howard, we'll talk about how customer education and customer marketing are the scale engines of customer success. This time, we're talking about time to business value and what that means to customer education and customer marketing. We'll have this discussion with a Manhattan. So grab your ingredients: 2 ounces of rye whiskey, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, and garnish with a branded cherry or a lemon twist. I prefer the branded cherry myself. Add the rye, vermouth, and bitters to a mixing glass filled with ice. Stir it up until you can feel the chill in the glass, and then pour it into what they call a Nick and Nora glass, and add your garnish. Pull up your glass and join the conversation. Right? So we are talking about time to business value in this session. And what does that really mean? So let's start with that question. What does time to business value really mean?
Yeah. When we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, I was thinking about how in education, right, especially when we're talking about onboarding, you have this time to value in your product. And I think when we think about education or customer marketing, we also have to think about that time to business value, that we don't have the luxury of taking forever to show value. Like, we do need to ship something and start to show the results to the business. And especially in such kind of a nascent industry that hasn't completely got its footing over time, we really need to be intentional about, yes, this is a long-term play, right? Your customer marketing and customer education or community should be a multi-year initiative, and you need to start showing the business value quickly. So how do you do that?
And I think that as we were having that discussion, we fleshed it out into 3 very kind of distinct levels of involvement, right? Identifying what that problem is that we need to solve, and then iterating against it. Again, we'll go into more detail in this, but then the third part of it is understanding that there's probably content already out there, and we can grab that and run with it in a variety of ways. So let's start with the problem to solve. I just got through a SEDMA because it was way fun. But one of the presentations by Daria, she really said that's what she calls herself, is a problem solver. And I like that, right? Because what we do in both customer education and customer marketing is we identify how we're going to solve the problem utilizing the one-to-many structure, right? Because it's all about scale. By the time it gets to us, it's something that needs scale attached to it. And so when we talk about identifying those problems to solve, what's the first plan of attack that you would take to that, Shannon?
It's funny because I do think that this builds on our previous topic of treating education as a product, because when you're building a product, you first think, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So I think it's looking at your stakeholders around the business, treating it like a product, and understanding what are the problems that exist, whether that's a gap in the customer journey, or there's a funnel, like conversion problem somewhere. People just seem to not get, maybe there's an influx of support tickets, they're just not getting something. So we're taking in all this data and kind of trying to identify where is the problem. And then beyond that, what is the actual problem? So the data is maybe highlighting a gap or an opportunity, but then we're maybe looking in community in those conversations or talking with customers to understand, okay, I'm seeing this in the data, but why is that happening? And then that allows us to better understand what is a potential solution that could, solve that problem.
And we end up to identifying the other internal teams that will either be assisting us in trying to deliver against the problem, or may have the insights that we need to be able to understand the problem deeply enough to be able to put forth the proper solutions, right? So it could be that you're working with marketing, because something that happens in demand gen is causing a bottleneck somewhere else that is on the post-sales side of the equation. So that's where we come in, right? Customer education and customer marketing really focus on that post-sales motion. And so it could be something from there. It could be something from support, where we do a lot. The whole concept of how we do this really focuses a lot on ticket deflection, right? And some of the conversations that we can have that say, if we solve those issues, then the people that are in support and the way that our customers use support becomes more elevated. It doesn't necessarily decrease. I was talking to the guys at Contentful over over this last week, and one of the things that they said is that what they've discovered is that their tickets actually go up.
But
Once
they're quality questions.
Exactly.
It's not, where do I find this button or this setting? It's
right.
maybe more strategic, or
Exactly.
asking about a different part of the product that they weren't using before.
And that's where we can get to business value, right? Once we start to hit strategy, that's when we can start to show value.
All right. So, okay, we've got a problem to solve. We've got a strategy. I just feel like strategy has to start at the top. So often we kind of like move into solution mode without the, the overarching vision and plan. So now we have the strategy. Now we got to actually put something in the wild. And how do we get things in the wild quickly? Right. So what is it? Is it Derek Sivers, or Peter something?
Adam. Yeah.
No. Business plan survives first contact.
Oh, that's right. That's Derek. Yep. You're right.
Yeah. And so how do we start to put something out there for people to respond to and to start actually generating some of those results?
Iteration, right? We just start. We find, here, and we get, this is like our two and three go together for points, right? Because there may be content that already exists within the organization. It could be a blog post that somebody did. It could be a response to a support ticket. It could be a presentation that a CSM did for a particular customer 18 months ago. And it's somewhere on Google Drive or in your CMS or somewhere, right? And so we can start there and align it properly with the work that we need to do, right? If we're talking about it from an education perspective, we're focused on potentially building, I would say it more than just like a KB article that we're going to throw into somewhere. But because I think if we're really at this problem to solve piece, it might be deeper than that, right? We need something more than a 12-step how-to with a paragraph that intros it. I think, right, that may not be enough if it's to this level already. But we could be working with this in the thought of maybe it is a continuing blog that's put out by customer marketing through community or through newsletters or through whatever our mechanism is to distribute content, because it's a thought process, right? We've identified what the problem is. We said how deep it needs to go. And iteration one is just kind of building the outline and getting in there and saying, this is what we need to talk about. Doesn't mean we can't come back and revisit step number one, right? It just means that we have to identify what those steps are, because Kristine's little personal thing here is everything we do has to be process driven, right? It has to work in a workflow. It can't just be this random thought, because nobody remembers the random thoughts. What they remember is these are the 7 things I need to do my job. Right, to do this task, to complete my job. And so we have to really work in that framework a little bit. But I think you're right. I think we can leverage content that already exists and then iterate it. I mean, it's never going to be perfect the first time, and don't expect it to be. Right.
Well, yeah. So you mentioned 2 and 3 go together. And again, product principles. I'm like always going to come back to this is when you're launching a product, you have an MVP, a minimum viable product. Viable meaning it functions, minimum meaning it's the least you can do for it to be functioning as a product. I would also say secondary V word would be valuable. Obviously, you want to create something that produces value for your audience. And I think we talked about this. This is the Adam quote, is around, what is it? Perfection is the enemy of progress. We don't need the world's leading piece of content, that's unlike any other, far superior, and it has all these great bells and whistles. In order to put something out there, we can just like you said, a 7-step, we were just talking before the call started about like 7-step blog. I took a webinar that had some really great content and turned it into a 5-step blog. And it's outperforming all of our other content just because it's really simple and it's really easy and really applicable. And it did not take me much time to create it all because I'm just putting a new spin on something that's already being said. I'm just putting it in a different format. And I think what you were talking about too, of thinking, what are those things that I need to walk through, is so helpful from an education perspective, is to think about content can be all kinds of things. It could be a quick video, something that's really popular that I've done for a lot of companies is just, I call it the lay of the land video. It's a quick overview of the platform. What is in here and where do I find it? Let's just start there. 2 minutes, quick overview. Now we know what's in here, the lay of the land, and that has helped to answer a lot of questions. But it doesn't have to be flashy and fancy. Like, get on Zoom.
We used to do a little, like a scavenger hunt.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
Right? Where all we did is we said, here's the 10 most important things you need to know in this environment. Here's what they're called. Go experiment. Tell me where this is. Go find this. The whole thing didn't take more than 20 minutes.
Well, and the nice thing is too, so Dave Darrington and I just did a podcast on CE Lab with Michelle Ellis. And we were talking about how do we learn? And it's interesting because I'm a reader as a learner in general, but when it comes to software, I'm a poke around, find things. I want to know what the heck's in here. What is it similar to? And so we were talking about that. We all are a little bit more of a, let's look under the hood, kind of poke around. And a scavenger hunt is, I think, a more intentional version of poking around. It's not a click a button, watch an arrow move around, onboarding guided tour, but it is a little bit more directed and you can kind of have fun finding things in the product.
And we had, and this is the joy of knowing your products people really well, because we were able to put in some Easter eggs. Right. So if they did find it, then there was benefit to that. Right. There were prizes associated with it. They weren't any big deal, but it was cute. But right. It was cutesy stuff.
That's awesome. Okay. So we're starting with a problem to solve. We're creating a strategy. We have an MVP. We're just putting something out there. I just want to say for people, because in customer marketing, I think we need to think, what is a version of this program, right? So when I think about awards programs, there's awards programs where you put out a call and CSMs invite people to submit a nomination, or they nominate their client and someone submits something. And then there's what Kevin was doing at Adobe, which is awesome. They have a gala, they have all this stuff. Okay, I do not have the budget for a gala that also, there's a whole team of one most of the time, right? So, there's different stages, but you can get there. And again, if you could show the value here in your MVP version, then you get the buy-in to do something a little fancier and snazzier next time. And then same thing with education. If you can put something out there, even if it's just a screen share video or a webinar or a piece of content, start showing the value of that and build on it over time, kind of, what was it, like building a certification. One company I was at, we had this idea that we wanted to build out certifications around each kind of pillar of our product, but rather than build a whole certification at once, we were releasing module by module, tying it in so people would know, like, hey, this is going to be a full-fledged certification, but we're going to be releasing this content over time. And it gave people an opportunity to learn, test the content, provide feedback, and it let us keep shipping while they were working towards something, but we might not have the full something ready,
Well, and I think too that we can see the value now, particularly, again, big discussion over the last few days was AI, right?
Yeah.
And by utilizing some of these particularly generative AI tools, we can spend less time on the baseline activities that we would have wasted time. I don't want to say wasted because it's never a waste, but when we're building that first piece of content, if we're aiming for business value, are we going to do TBV? Are we going to give it an abbreviation? Right? Time to business value?
I don't know. The world does not need more acronyms.
We'll let you guys decide. Right? Put it in the comments. But the idea behind it is if we need to get time to business value reduced, then leveraging tools that will help us in the time consuming phase, right? We were talking before too about how we're seeing a large influx of people coming into particularly customer education, but also customer success and customer marketing that are coming from industries where you had more leeway in the amount of time you could take to get up and running, right?
Mhm.
When I joined TI, 15 months ago now, they gave me 90 days to be able to put a plan together and start executing against a plan and identifying what the three big things were going to be that we were going to try to tackle over the course of the year. And when Raghu Viswanathan did his presentation at SEDMA this week, he had something to his leadership in 15 days,
Mhm.
right?
I've done presentations as part of the hiring process.
Right.
So yeah,
And
we are
so
being
we
expected
have
to
to
move
recognize that
quickly.
we cannot afford to use unnecessary time, right? Because we have to get time to first value, to that business value, to be as close to identification of the problem as possible,
And
right?
I think that's where that, right? So generative AI can help us cut down some time on some things, repurposing content. So pulling from other places. I mean, I'm doing that with a piece of content right now, is taking a longer form piece of content and shortening it to something else, right? So you can take, and I want to say it's Gary Vee has this great thing where he would record a video, turn it into a video podcast, like 35 pieces of content. Not saying we all have to do that, but just that idea that you can just, I call it getting more mileage out of the thing that you already
Well,
have.
and YouTube has this thing now where it lets you create little mini stories, right? So you can load up a full set of video and it'll piece it out into smaller component pieces, which I think is pretty, I haven't tested it yet, but
Okay,
it's pretty cool.
I'm gonna have to test
Yeah,
that.
yeah. My latest follow, Austin, actually was talking about it in one of his
Okay.
posts. But so we need to be thinking about the tools, right? So that we can both iterate and repurpose again, because they're very intertwined, I think, right?
Mhm.
And get through the structure part of just getting that content out.
Mhm.
So
And then knowing where, we talked about this too, about I don't like saying cutting corners because it sounds cheap, but knowing where you don't have to do all the legwork, right? Of you don't have to interview 12 customers every time you produce something. There's data that exists in previous places. You probably have recurring relationships with some of your customers. Trust that there are some things that you can infer to speed up the process a little bit.
well,
But
and leverage the places where data is already being stored, right?
Mhm.
Leverage the support tickets, right? Because support
Mhm.
deflection is one of the biggest things we try to solve anyway as a problem. But there's that leverage community, right?
Mhm.
People are providing questions and answers. You can find
Mhm.
you can do trend analysis based on tags that will
Mhm.
help you figure out at least who, right? Because if you see the tags, you can see that customer A is always voicing
Mhm.
information about whatever, right? Whatever tag, whatever topic it is. So leverage those options for the repurpose, because there's probably a draft of the solution right there. So
I'm glad that you brought that up. So you talked support tickets, community, customer success calls, sales calls, like a lot of this stuff is already win-loss analyses, things like that. You're probably, there's a lot of data. And so I'm glad that you started to kind of talk about some of those places, because I think that's what I'm hearing is, okay, what data should I be looking for? And
right.
so
Well,
a reminder, it's not always product feature adoption usage data in a mix panel or segment or heap, right? Which would be great if you can get that, like try to get access. And there's qualitative data too that's being captured from all these angles, and kind of sifting through that, doing the trend analysis like you're talking about can help you get a better understanding of your
right,
landscape.
for things like adoption, right? And who has a voice.
Mhm.
If you're really trying to figure out who's using your tools, the people that are talking about your tools are using your tools,
Mhm.
right? So where are they talking about it?
We just said when we look, we should really just press record as soon as we get on a phone together. As I said, unleash the nerds, find the nerds.
Right?
And
Exactly.
on the
Right.
world. We just need these people. We all just learned so much from the people who love what they do, are passionate about what they do, and can talk wax poetic on the thing that, whatever it is, the nitty gritty of the thing that they're doing. We just need more of that. And we just gotta find those people and unleash them on the world.
And so that's the goals, right, that we have. We identify our problem, we go ahead and figure out what the minimum viable / valuable part of our product is, right? Because again, we've talked about go-to-market and how education is a product and how customer marketing can help sell the product, right? But we also need to understand that we're building that content through iteration, through the repurposing, because we have to get it out the door. We can't afford, we don't, that our times have been so compressed.
Yeah, have to make the most of the resources that we have. All right, so I think that's
Build your plans, let us know what you think, and we will see you next time.